Hi everyone, welcome back to GameMaker Cast. It's Mickey, and in today's video, we'll be creating some reflections and water effects. Let's play the introduction and get right into it. Now, I've covered reflections on the channel before, but the one question I get asked all the time is, how do I make this work with the viewport? So if we take a look at our room setup, you can see right away we already have a viewport in the game. It's this little white square, and if we take a look at the settings, we'll come down to viewports and viewport 0. You can see that my camera is 200 by 200, and then my viewport itself is being scaled up to 600 by 600. I have a small camera object within the room, and all this is doing is allowing us to move the camera around with the keyboard. Let's close everything and take a look at our water object. Before we get into the code, I want to show you the sprite that we're using, and in particular, take a look at the origin as I have it in the top left, which is just going to make things a lot easier going forward. Back to the water object itself, you can see that we have a create event, and we also have a draw event. They're both empty, so let's start from scratch. Inside the create event, what we need to do is we need to hold onto a variable for our surface. So let's just create a new variable called surface mirror and set it to -1. Now I also want to calculate the width and the height based on our beatbox elements. So I'm going to do this in create event because for optimization, I don't feel like we need to do this 60 times a second. Now the next line of code is the important code. And what we need to do is we need to resize the application surface, which is our game screen, to be the same size as our camera. You can see here on the bottom left, I have 200 by 200, which is matching our surface resize function. And while we are talking about cameras, let's just store our viewport inside an easy variable to save on typing. And that's actually all we need for the create event. So let's switch over to the draw event, and I'll maximize my screen. Inside this draw event, we need to ensure our surface exists. Remember that resizing the window, minimizing or maximizing our game may cause the surface to be destroyed. So it's always best practice to make sure that the surface exists. If it doesn't exist, then we're going to create the surface based on the width and height that we found in the create event. And once again, to save on typing, let's store the camera's X and Y position in some nice easy variables. Now here's the tricky part. We need to copy from our application surface and paste it into our own surface. So what we'll do is we'll copy from the X and Y position of our water, taking into account the camera's X and Y position, and then pasting it into the surface mirror at the top left corner, which is 0 and 0. Now that we've taken a screenshot of what's on our application surface, what I want to do is I want to draw a nice blue line to have some water effects. Because we need to draw on this particular surface, let's make sure we set the target to our surface mirror. Now I want to set my color in alpha. And finally, I need to draw a rectangle. However, it won't be at the top of our surface because we are going to flip this. So we need to draw it at the bottom left, going all the way across and then up 8 pixels. Now that we are done drawing on this surface, let's make sure that we reset the target so everything will be drawn on the application surface once again. While we are resetting everything, let's reset our color in alpha back to what it should be. Finally, the last command that we need is going to draw our surface onto the game. We know that we also want to flip it, so we're going to be using a draw surface extended. We'll start at the X and Y position of our water. However, what I want to do is move it down 2 heights. This will put it at the bottom of our mirror, and then we can flip the image Y scale, which will invert our reflection. Now let's switch back to our room main. Make sure I'm on the water layer itself, and I'm going to drag out one of my water objects. I'm actually going to put a couple in my room because you're going to see how easy this is to make reflections. Now if I run my game view is going to be pretty small, but you'll see we have a nice smiley face, and I can move the camera down, and here's the reflection right here. I can also go over and up to find the other reflection, and you can see it's working just fine. So the next step is going to be using the effects and filters to add the underwater shader. Let's go ahead and close our game and make sure we have the inspector up. If we don't have the inspector up, you can go to Windows and then click on Inspector. Now what you want to make sure is that you have the water layer selected, and you can see that we have the instance. And then I'll go to the effect and I'll scroll down and I'll choose underwater. You can see the effect is happening in the editor already. So that means that when I run my game, my smiley face will be reflected. and he is now under the water. Now remember, we added a bunch of them into our game, so that means I can go looking around to find the other reflections, and you can see how they are working, and they are just fine. And with this just little bit of code, we have a reflection working and an underwater shader effect. Thank you for watching the video. A special shout out to those on Patreon in no particular order: David, Ken, Timothy, Paul, Victor, GameMaker Community, Ashby, Mary, and Robert. If you liked this video and want to see more, hit that thumbs up button and don't forget to subscribe. You can also check out my Patreon site, which is found in the description below. Thanks again.